Welcome to the Art of Intelligence, where we decode the future of AI, one story, one use case, and one bold idea at a time. I'm your host, Barlas Yuce, inviting you to join me and industry leaders as we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping our world, from the boardroom to the classroom and beyond. Whether you're an innovator, a skeptic, or just AI curious, this is your front row seat to the real conversations and practical insights behind the buzzwords. Let's paint a bigger picture together. And today we have a very special guest. We have Miss Melissa Reeve. Melissa is the founder of HyperAdaptive Solutions and creator of the HyperAdaptive Model. She is the author of HyperAdaptive Rewiring Organizations to Become AI Native. HyperAdaptive brings together process excellence, systems thinking, and a human side of AI integration to help leaders reimagine how their organizations learn and adapt. Now, prior to leaning into AI, Melissa spent 25 years as an executive and agile thought leader, which led to the pioneer work in agile marketing and her role as the first VP of marketing at Scaled Agile, which helps enterprise adopt agile, learn at scale. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with her husband, dogs, and chickens, where she enjoys hiking and gardening. Wow, that is fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for hosting the podcast and inviting me to share on it today.
Anytime, Melissa. I'm really glad that we got to get you scheduled, and I really want to learn all about your chickens as well, and what type of chickens you have, and which one's your favorite. Everyone's got a favorite chicken when they have a coop, right? Before we get into that, I'd like to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests. If you could have one job that would last 12 months, anywhere in the world, in any timeline, what would that job be?
So the job would be a clairvoyant, and I would pick probably Turkey in like the 8th century and just
Interesting.
see what people were interested in and concerned about for 12 months in that time period.
Wow, that is probably the best answer that I've ever gotten. Now, did you know I was Turkish?
No, I didn't know you were Turkish.
Yeah, I was born in Istanbul. Been here for 40 years, but go back on a regular basis. My entire original family, not my wife and children, but my entire original family is still there.
It's a
Um,
fascinating place.
Fascinating place, so much history, so wonderful. Well, I'm really glad that you brought up Turkey. That's pretty fantastic. And who is your favorite chicken?
Who's my favorite chicken is Astralorp. So we call her Astro because she is an Astralorp, which is the breed of chicken. And just, she has a funky personality.
Nice. What kind of chicken is she?
And I think the
Escalop.
breed is Astralorp, yeah.
And what color is an escalope? I've never.
It's like a goldeny type brown.
Ooh, very nice. That sounds really nice. And are they egg producing chickens?
They are, yeah. So our house was originally part of a chicken farm, and while the farm has been dismantled, we still have a handful of chickens.
That's fantastic. I mean, that really is fantastic. I really like the idea of chickens. Unfortunately for me, every time I want chickens, it always happens to be in a place that says you can't have chickens, which is, sad for me. Um, but, I'd like to really understand your background. You were doing a lot of different things as you were in your career. So, what got you into the hyperadaptive model? And can you give us a little background on that?
Sure. I like to say that it started on a shop floor in Tokyo. So my background in college, I was studying Japanese literature and language, but as part of living in Japan in the 90s, we also studied industrial engineering, and I toured the Hino Motor Factory and saw the Toyota production system in
Oh, wow.
action. Yeah, that was really cool. And so throughout my career, there was this through line of systems thinking. I didn't have the words for it. It was how I approached the world. And so when I came across Agile and Lean, All of a sudden, these words, I started to have words for what I was thinking and how I viewed the world. And then when I moved into Scaled Agile, which brought Agile to the world's largest organizations, it layered upon that. How do you start to mobilize a large organization, a large enterprise? So change management, John Kotter, Peter Senge, and how to create a learning organization. And when I got disrupted by AI, so ChatGPT hit marketing hard and fast, I recognized what it would take for organizations to truly integrate AI into their operations, and started to think about this hyper-adaptive model, which is really just a fancy way of saying AI native.
Very nice. And how does it help organizations to rewire for AI native success?
Yeah, so I like to describe the current state of organizations as linear. So you have strategy to execution, you have concept to delivery, and a lot of handoffs and delays through both of those dimensions. And so AI is going to compress both of those dimensions and put pressure on these large enterprises to operate more quickly, leanly, in a more AI native way where they can sense and respond and evolve in near real time. And for me, that's what hyperadaptivity starts to look like.
That's excellent. Can you describe the core principles of hyperadaptive and how they balance process and excellence and systems thinking and human factors in AI integration?
Sure. So the hyperadaptive model has 5 core capabilities, and those include things like AI augmented decision making, the ability to integrate learning loops into everything that you're doing, the ability to have sensing mechanisms and hopefully some AI-driven sensing mechanisms. And these are the types of core capabilities that I believe organizations will need to have as we move into a more AI native world.
So when you're saying basically a flywheel of AI, as AWS would call it, um, so as you do something, you take a look at how that affected the rest of the company and then take that information, take it back to all the different divisions and say, this is how we're going to make this leaner and faster and cheaper. And then do it again and again and again until you're at maximum efficiency. That's fantastic. I like that idea. That's right up my wheelhouse.
Nice.
Now, in your experience, what are the biggest barriers for leaders when adapting their organizations to become AI native?
I feel like leadership hasn't quite grokked the fact that you need to support an AI implementation from the people, process, and roles side. So, for example, a lot of organizations have spun up AI leads or AI champions, but they haven't systematically supported them to say, here's the training you're going to get, here's how you, as an AI lead, help spread AI in the organization. Here's how you deal with people who maybe aren't as ready to integrate AI. And there's several support structures that I recommend people spinning up. Another one is something I call an AI activation hub that is focused on measuring your AI success and atomizing learning to get it to the right people at the right time and really supporting this implementation. And I feel like executives, mainly because we're all coming up this learning curve together, are doing the hand wave of go play with AI and hope that will work.
Yeah, I often say that a lot of companies, when they're saying they're AI enabled, it just means that they have a Perplexity Pro license, and they're telling their customers, "Oh yeah, we are AI enabled. We have everything on AI." When it's actually just one guy asking, "What's the best place for chicken takeout in the
That's
area?"
right. Yeah, if you're measuring people who are using AI, like how do you do that? Is that one prompt? Is that, yeah, like what does that mean? It's the one guy ordering chicken. I love that.
Yeah, and it could be if your measurement of AI is the number of folks that are using AI, you could be at 100% usage.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is 100% AI process. It just means there's a lot of people that are using AI to do everything. And
Hmm.
that's not a term for success.
That's right.
Can you tell us, how does hyperadaptive approach accelerate organizational learning and adaptability in the face of technological change?
That's a mouthful, isn't it? But
Yeah, a lot of big
yeah, like,
words.
how does a hyper adaptive approach? Well, when you get your organization sensing and responding in real time, it helps you to achieve your goals. And this points to another thing I think that many leaders are missing, which is an AI North Star. So how is AI going to help you achieve your goals? And the example I like to give, which is becoming very well known, is Moderna. And Moderna's goal with AI is to release 15 new drugs in 5 years. And that's in an environment where it typically takes 10 years to release one drug. So you can see how they're using that North Star to align everything else underneath. I mean, if you're in any part of the organization, you can take a look at how you're using AI and say, will this help us achieve our North Star? And then to your question around hyperadaptivity, if we are sensing and responding in near real time and we're running these experiments, we're going to be able to reach that goal of 15 drugs in 5 years much more quickly because we're failing faster.
Yeah, that's. I was actually talking to one of my guests last week, and Paul Banco. He's the CEO of EtherFax, the company that makes sure that doctors who still use fax have the ability to do so from their computers. And he was telling me about how one doctor talked to him about AI. He said that being able to use AI in our everyday practice as doctors or healthcare workers gives you access to 200 doctors over 1,000 years of doctoring, and
Hmm.
what happened to them and what they learned, what they didn't learn. So it makes it a lot easier to go, well, here's the symptoms that have been shown in the past. 100 times it's done this, 800 times it's done this, and 400 times this has been the diagnosis. So it allows doctors to actually start looking at, all the past cases instead of just what they have access to. So that's
Yeah.
really fantastic. That's the way then. Failing fast is a great way of explaining that.
Nice. I love that medical example too. It makes me realize just how often we've shortchanged quality. We've been constrained by our human minds, by information availability, and what AI can enable when we introduce it into our everyday work.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up an interesting side to that. You emphasize in your work the human side of AI integration. What practices most effectively foster that adaptability and resilience among teams?
Well, I think we have to teach each other, and I can say with 100% certainty what stifles that adaptability. It's the lack of psychological safety. It has roots in Taylorism, right? There's one best way to do it, and the management class knows that one best way and is imparting it on the laboring class. And when you have that mindset, when you're thinking that way, you're not going to get the natural curiosity that hyperadaptivity needs. So instead of doing that, you need to create the environment that nurtures the curiosity, that nurtures the experiments. For example, one organization that I talked to not only had a prompting sharing session on Thursday, they had failure Fridays. And so in that way, they were encouraging people to share their failures and making it safe to do so. And I feel like that type of a culture, that type of environment is what helps to nurture the mindset that you need to implement hyperadaptivity.
Win fast, lose fast.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Um, Being someone who's done Japanese studies, uh, what is your thoughts on hyperadaptability with which you may or may not know, but Nimawashe, the Japanese cultivating of roots and getting all the information before you present to a senior manager. Is that something that is part of hyperadaptability, being able to get all that information and being able to bring that up to a CEO or a decision-making power?
Well, I think what it speaks to, again, is the removal of our human constraints. So the way we make decisions today is with incomplete information. And a lot of times it boils down to pretend information or information theater. Like, oh, I've researched a few sources, I put them up on a PowerPoint deck, and so let's debate, which is really debating opinions around this. But what if we can actually do deep research around something? What if we can surface information just like the doctor did, that's much more broad and deep, and make much more educated guesses or more informed decisions than we're making now? I feel like that's the real power of AI that speaks to what you were saying.
Fantastic. And one follow-up question on that. So when talking about the limitations of our brain and how all of the information that we have access to with AI to be able to make those big decisions, how does culture, empathy come into that? The way that the Turkish people like to receive and give information is in a very specific way. The way that Americans do is very specific, and Japanese are even 10 times more, less percentage based and more black and white. How does cultural play a part of it with hyperadaptability?
It's a fascinating question, and I got that question in a different way from someone else, and they were talking about the hierarchy. And Japan's a very hierarchical society, and so how do you foster hyperadaptability within that type of a culture? And I think it's possible. For example, the Japanese have figured out how to, through lean and other practices, take information that's being gathered from the bottom and communicate it up to the top, right? Through retrospectives, through escalation, through all of these ways, anybody's empowered to pull that and-on cord. I think the question behind the question is, does this notion of hyperadaptability need to be adapted to a cultural context? And I think the answer is absolutely. Just like it will need to be adapted for an organizational cultural context. Every organization, these large enterprises, is a little different. It will need to be adapted for a geographic cultural context as well.
I like that. I like the question that the other person asked you about the hierarchy. I didn't even think about along those terms as well, on how you would talk to one person in the same culture as opposed to talking to somebody else in the same culture, and the type of information you might give somebody on the bottom as opposed to the type of information you give somebody on the top. It's really interesting, actually. What are the first concrete steps leaders should take to apply the hyperadaptive model in their organizations?
Well, I think we've talked about some of them, right? We talked about the AI North Star. We talked about the support structures that you need to put in place. I would encourage any leader who really wants to move the needle with AI to recognize that this is a systemic change. And I like to say that you can't expect 21st century results with a 20th century operating model. And that is essentially what we're talking about here, is rewiring your entire operating model. And when you think about it from that lens, you recognize that it has to happen gradually over time. Because the other mistake that I see leaders making is they try and do it all at once. They're like, oh, let's start orchestrating all of these agents, but they haven't even gotten their foundational elements in place. And so I really advocate for big organizations to be very deliberate about this transition, to recognize the magnitude of the transition and recognize that in order for chaos not to ensue, a deliberate approach would be wise.
Absolutely. It's easier to swim towards an island than just swimming in circles.
Love that.
Now, how can organizations ensure that process excellence and systems thinking do not overshadow the importance of the human ingenuity when adopting AI?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that needs to be rewired is decisions, the decision frameworks, how decisions are made. We talked about how decisions are shortchanged and how AI can help that. But there's this other avenue, which is all about what decisions do you hand over to AI and what are the guardrails around that. Earlier, I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about how you rewire your review system for the people around you with AI, and she was talking about AI autonomously suggesting people who would be promoted, and I felt like I wanted to really put the brakes on that and say I don't think that's something that we want to be turning over to AI. AI can provide information, but it's going to miss critical things if we turn over those types of decisions. So I feel like that's how you inject and keep the human aspects of the organization, even as you're thinking about the system, is you really have to be deliberate about when, where, and how you're using AI in the organization.
Yeah, that's been a common theme between a lot of my podcasts with a lot of folks talking about AI adoption. Some folks have said, find a problem or find something that's the most tedious and take it and see if you can take AI to that level. And some have said, no, don't start off like that. Go to all of the different departments, find out everything that those departments are doing, have AI learn, all of those departments, all the processes, have AI find the weakest link. And then from there, there's a lot of different ways of making this happen. But at the end of the day, we all know that we need to have AI as an implementation. Every CEO knows that if you don't have some kind of AI story, you're going to be kicked to the curb. That same Paul Banco, CEO of Etherfax, on my podcast, he had said that when he was at a vendor event a couple months back, one of the very large hospital networks said that if a vendor does not have an AI plan in place or just something put together that sounds plausible for the next 12 months, that they would no longer be a vendor of that medical system. That's saying a lot. Like, that's basically saying, look, you need to do something, and it can't just be Perplexity Pro licenses. You're going to have to actually do something with AI that helps us and integrates with us. And that's very powerful when your very large customers are telling you, you have to do this, as opposed to, we'll put AI on the website. It'd be really nice. We'll throw a party. It'd be a nice spread. Things like that are going to fall to the wayside. People have to really start pushing things up. Now, let me ask you this question. We're coming to kind of the end of the podcast. If you're listening, thanks for sticking with us as you're running or driving or whatever your medium is in Apple or Spotify or YouTube. The reason that we have this podcast is to find unique AI use cases, things that people find interesting. And then a lot of these things spark articles, since we put articles out every day. Today's article was about, funny enough, Fight Club with Brad Pitt and Tyler Durden, and hallucinations, and how hallucinations can really affect. Like, did you know that 8 to 20% of AI diagnoses have a hallucination inside it, where it couldn't find the right information or the right stair step, so it created one, and that 13% of AI recommended surgeries are not needed. So but then you look at how many percentage of quack doctors' surgeries that they recommend are needed. So there's more work to be done, but it was a great article. So what is a unique AI use case that you've either seen, someone else do, something that you're doing right now or one of your customers are doing right now, or something you'd like to recommend that some guy in a university basement can build right now to make money?
Sure. So I'm going to riff on hallucinations since that's the topic du jour. Is the process that I used to create the book I thought was an interesting use case. And I first asked AI, because this is my first book. I've never written a book before. And I asked AI if I were a best-selling author, and I picked on Adam Grant. If I were Adam Grant, what kind of team would I have surrounding me? And AI helped me surface roles that I didn't even know existed. For example, like a development editor. I didn't know what a development editor was. It also said that I would have a research assistant. And so, of course, I spun up these roles through custom GPTs. And the research assistant was wonderful. I used deep research, and the key learnings there were
Deep
use
research. All right.
yeah, right? Like who talks about deep research? We're all over the custom GPTs. But using AI to create these really intricate prompts that I could then put into deep research to surface the companies, the patterns that of these leading companies that were already using AI. Now, it hallucinated like crazy. Like, I don't know, 70% accuracy, 60% accuracy. So the technical debt there was me going in and having to check all of the articles and make sure it was saying what it said it was doing. But honestly, I would not have been able to create the book without that research partner. So that's the use case that I'd love to
I
share with
love
your
it.
audience.
That's fantastic. And speaking of the book, now that we're on the very end of the podcast, would you like to talk about the book and where you can find it, and if you have any signings coming up or any events?
Sure. So the book is now available for pre-order. It'll be out in the spring of 2026, but it's available for pre-order on major platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. I'd encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn because I'm dropping little articles and tips and everything related to the book between now and then. And it has been well received. People are looking for a model like this to help them integrate AI into their organizations.
It's fantastic. I love hearing that. So now that we're at the very end, I'd like to go ahead and thank you for taking the time to meet with us and talk about your book and hyperadaptability. And what we're trying to do here is get as many AI use cases out as possible. And we're also now starting a new program where if you subscribe to the website vbpcloud.com, which is the owner of Art of Intelligence, you'll receive an email every Monday morning with the vertical of your choice that you wanted to get an AI use case for. So go to the website, vbpcloud.com, and make that happen. And thanks for joining us today for today's inspiring conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe on LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify to stay up to date with the Art of Intelligence podcasts and articles and get more insights from leaders at the forefront of AI and cloud innovation.
Thanks
So
so
thank
much
you
for
so much
having
for
me
your
on the
time.
show.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me
thanks.
on the show.
See ya.
See ya.
All right, perfect. That
Unlock the art of AI by joining us on your favorite podcast platform every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.